You think money grows on trees, Nora? Every time I turn around, you got your hand in my wallet. You eat, you spend, you enjoy. And what exactly do you contribute around here? That was what my husband said to me on a Tuesday evening in October, while I was standing at the kitchen counter unpacking groceries I had just carried in from the car by myself. I was 62 years old, 34 years married, and I just stood there holding a bag of russet potatoes, staring at the man I had built an entire life with. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I set the potatoes down very slowly, turned to look at him, and said, "You're right. Let's fix that." He smiled. He actually smiled. He thought he had won something. Welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you're here. I share real stories every single day, and I think this one is going to stay with you for a while. Please subscribe and give this video a like before we get started. It means more than you know. Now let me tell you what happened next. My name is Nora. I spent 30 years as a bookkeeper for a mid-sized manufacturing company before I retired at 60. Numbers are not something I fear. I understand them the way other people understand breathing. Naturally, instinctively, without having to think too hard. My husband's name is Gerald. He's 64, retired 2 years before me from a city planning office, and he has always believed, in that quiet, unspoken way some men do, that being the one who originally signed the mortgage 30 years ago makes everything in the house fundamentally his. We have 2 adult children, both living in other states. Our son calls on Sundays. Our daughter visits at Christmas. Life had settled into a rhythm that looked peaceful from the outside and felt, on the inside, like slowly being pressed under a very heavy and polite stone. Every Sunday, without exception, Gerald's family descended on our house. His older brother, his younger brother, their wives, their adult children, occasionally grandchildren, a cousin or two who seemed to appear from nowhere with no warning. Gerald would announce on Friday or Saturday, almost as an afterthought, "Family's coming Sunday," the usual, and I would spend Saturday afternoon at the grocery store and Sunday morning in the kitchen. I roasted whole chickens. I made pots of mashed potatoes. I baked cornbread from scratch because Gerald's mother used to make it and his brothers always mentioned it. I made 2 or 3 salads. I made at least one dessert, usually a cobbler or a layer cake. I set the table with the good dishes. I refilled drinks. I cleared plates. When everyone left around 5 or 6 in the evening, I washed a mountain of dishes while Gerald watched football in the living room. This had been going on for 11 years since we moved into this particular house, since Gerald's mother passed and the Sunday gathering simply relocated to our address without anyone formally asking me. I never complained. I told myself it was what families did. I told myself I didn't mind. I had spent so long telling myself these things that I had almost started to believe them. But then came that Tuesday in October. I had stopped at the grocery store after my Tuesday water aerobics class, which I had recently started attending because my doctor suggested it and because it was frankly the 1 hour of the week that felt entirely mine. I spent $214 in groceries, a full week's worth for 2 people, plus what I would need for Sunday. Chicken, produce, pantry staples, the expensive coffee Gerald preferred, the specific brand of yogurt he ate every morning. I carried 4 heavy bags from the car to the kitchen without asking for help, because I never asked anymore. And that was when Gerald walked in, looked at the receipt I had left on the counter, and said what he said. His wallet. My hand in it. What do I contribute? I set the potatoes down. I said he was right, and I meant every word. That night I couldn't sleep. Gerald was snoring beside me as comfortably as a man who has said something true and done the right thing. I lay there in the dark and I thought, I am a bookkeeper, a retired one, but the skills do not retire. I got up quietly, went to the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and I started a spreadsheet. I have kept every receipt since 1987. Gerald has made fun of this habit for 34 years. A shoebox in the hall closet holds the last 3 years in organized rubber-banded stacks by month. I got the shoebox. Groceries. I do all the grocery shopping. I always have. I buy for both of us and I buy for Sunday. For a regular week, not a Sunday week, I spend approximately $180. On Sunday weeks, which is every week, I spend between $280 and $380, depending on how many people are coming and whether Gerald has mentioned anyone wanted something specific. I averaged it out, $320 a week. Over 11 years of Sundays, accounting for the weeks I underspent and the holidays where I spent considerably more, my grocery spending directly attributable to feeding Gerald's family came to somewhere around $68,000. Then I moved to other categories. The gas for my car, running errands I run for both of us, the household supplies, dish soap, laundry detergent, paper towels, the specific brand of toilet paper Gerald required, cleaning products. I buy all of these. I always have. Gerald has not purchased a roll of paper towels in this house in over a decade. I know this because I buy them. Birthday gifts for his brothers, their wives, their children. I have bought every single one. Gerald would mention the date was approaching, and I would figure out what to get. Christmas gifts for the entire extended family. Every year. I researched, I purchased, I wrapped them. Gerald signed the cards. His younger brother's wife had a baby 3 years ago. I bought the baby shower gift, the hospital gift, the first birthday gift. Gerald smiled and took credit at the family gathering. Fine. I didn't need credit. I just didn't want to be told I contributed nothing. I also found the receipts for the 2 separate occasions I had quietly covered Gerald's car insurance payment when money was short, once 4 years ago, once 2 years ago. He had mentioned it was a bad month. I had transferred the money without making it a conversation. He had never mentioned it again. I sat at the kitchen table until 2 in the morning. The total in my spreadsheet was not a number I felt comfortable saying out loud because it made me feel something I wasn't sure I was ready to name. Let me just say it was large. It was very large. It was the kind of number that made "what exactly do you contribute" feel like something you could not walk back from. I closed the laptop. I went to bed. I lay down next to the man I had been married to for 34 years, and I thought, very calmly, about what came next. In the morning, Gerald came to the kitchen expecting breakfast. I was already dressed, coffee in hand, sitting at the table with my laptop. There was no breakfast on the stove. "What's going on?" he asked, opening the refrigerator and looking around as if the eggs might introduce themselves. "I've been thinking about what you said last night," I told him pleasantly. "I think you're absolutely right. We should operate with clear financial boundaries. I'll handle my expenses and you'll handle yours." He looked at me over the refrigerator door. "I didn't mean it like a business arrangement." "Of course you did," I said. "You said I had my hand in your wallet, so I'm removing it. Completely and permanently." He made himself toast, which took longer than he expected because he had to find the bread and operate the toaster, both of which have been in the same location for 9 years. He burned the first piece. He didn't say anything else about it. That evening, I called the bank and had the joint checking account restructured. We would each contribute an equal amount to cover shared household costs, utilities, property tax, home insurance, and everything else we would purchase independently. I set up a new personal account and redirected my retirement income into it. The next day, I called the grocery delivery service I had been curious about for years and never used because Gerald said it was wasteful and unnecessary. I set up an account. I ordered groceries for myself. Good groceries for myself. Good groceries. The kind I liked. Fresh fish. Good olive oil. A particular brand of sparkling water I had always hesitated to buy because it seemed like a small luxury. I did not order Gerald's yogurt. I did not order his coffee. I did not order the specific brand of chips he liked to eat while watching his programs. If he wanted those things, he was welcome to purchase them. Thursday, he went to the grocery store for the first time in recent memory and came back with chips, beer, a rotisserie chicken, and a bag of apples. I watched him unload his 4 items and put them on his designated shelf in the refrigerator. I had drawn a quiet boundary down the middle, and I thought, well, he can manage. Friday evening, Gerald said, "Family is coming Sunday as usual." "I know," I said. "So what are you making?" I turned a page of my book. "Nothing." The silence that followed was the kind that has weight and texture. "What do you mean, nothing?" "I mean, I'm not cooking Sunday dinner," I said calmly. "You are welcome to cook or order food or let your family know that arrangements have changed. However you handle it is fine with me." Gerald sat down. He looked at me with the particular expression of a man who has given an ultimatum and is only now beginning to understand that the other person accepted it. Nora, he said, these are my brothers. They are, I agreed, and I have cooked for them every single Sunday for 11 years. But since we're operating independently now, their meals are your responsibility, not mine. That's not how a family works. I closed my book. I looked at my husband steadily. Gerald, 3 nights ago, you stood in this kitchen and told me I had my hand in your wallet and contributed nothing. I agreed to correct that. I'm correcting it. You can't have both. He went to bed early that night. I finished my book and made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat by the living room window watching the street in the dark, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt something that might have been peace. Sunday arrived. Gerald spent Saturday on the phone with his brothers, which I know because I could hear parts of the conversation from the kitchen where I was doing my own thing, making a roasted vegetable tart for myself to eat throughout the week. Because I like roasted vegetable tart, and I have never once made it on a Sunday because it wasn't what the group wanted. I heard Gerald say something about things being a little different this week and figured we'd keep it simple. I didn't intervene. His brothers arrived at noon as always. His older brother, his wife, their daughter. His younger brother, his wife, her name is Patrice, and their 2 college-age kids. A total of 7 people, not counting Gerald. I was sitting in the living room reading when they came in. I greeted everyone warmly. I offered nothing. The kitchen table had on it a stack of pizza boxes Gerald had driven to pick up that morning, 2 bags of potato chips, a 2-liter of soda. The serving platters were in the cabinet. The good dishes were in the cabinet. The good dishes were in the cabinet. The tablecloth I always ironed was in the linen closet. Gerald's older brother walked into the kitchen, looked at the pizza boxes, looked around the kitchen, and looked at me. "Where's the real food?" he said, and he was half joking but only half. "I didn't cook today," I said simply. He looked at Gerald. Gerald looked at the floor. Patrice, my younger brother-in-law's wife, was watching all of this from the doorway. She is 12 years younger than me, warm and direct, and she has been coming to these Sundays as long as we've lived in this house. She looked at the pizza boxes, looked at me, and something shifted in her expression. She came and sat next to me in the living room while the men served themselves from the boxes. "Are you all right?" she asked quietly. I told her what Gerald had said on Tuesday. All of it, the exact words. "What exactly do you contribute?" Patrice was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He actually said that to you." "He did. After you cook for 8 people every single Sunday." "Every Sunday for 11 years, I said. I did the math. $68,000 in groceries for Sunday meals alone, not counting holidays, not counting gifts for every family birthday and Christmas, not counting the 2 times I quietly covered his car insurance when he said it was a bad month." Patrice looked at me for a long moment. Then she called her husband into the living room. "Come here," she said. "You need to hear this." What followed was not a scene I could have predicted or planned. My younger brother-in-law sat down and listened to Patrice explain, calmly and precisely, what Gerald had said and what I had since calculated. Gerald had followed them in and was standing near the doorway. His older brother had come to see what was going on and was leaning against the wall. "She covered your car insurance twice?" my younger brother-in-law said, looking at Gerald. Gerald said nothing. "Gerald," his older brother said, "she's cooked for us every Sunday for 11 years, every birthday, every Christmas, every holiday at this table. My kids think of Nora's cooking as something that has always just existed, like water from a tap." Gerald said, "I didn't mean it as an insult." Patrice looked at him with the patient, precise expression of a woman who has heard that sentence before. "What did you mean it as?" "The pizza sentence box is getting cold. Nobody moved to eat any more of it." The afternoon had become something else entirely. Later, after everyone had gone home, they left earlier than usual, not in anger exactly, but in the particular discomfort of people who have seen something true and don't know what to do with it yet. Gerald and I sat at the kitchen table together for the first time in a long time, actually facing each other. "I was wrong," he said. "About what I said." "Tell me what you were wrong about," I said. "Not cruelly, just clearly." I called it my wallet, he said, but it isn't only my wallet. You have a retirement income. You've contributed to this house financially for 34 years. And in other ways, I said. And in other ways, he agreed. He was quiet. He looked older to me in that moment, and also somehow more honest than he had looked in years. I think I said it because I was feeling pinched about money, and I turned it into something else. You turned it into a way of making me feel small. He looked down at the table. Yes, that's the part that matters, Gerald. Not that you were worried about money, that you looked at 34 years and chose to make me feel like I was taking from you. He didn't have an answer for that. I didn't expect one. The honest version of why people say the things they say usually takes more than a week to surface. I kept to the new arrangement. I cooked for myself and ate well. I made the roasted vegetable tart again. I made salmon with capers because I love salmon with capers and had quietly stopped making it years ago because Gerald found it too fancy. I made good coffee for myself in the mornings and let Gerald manage his own breakfast and found that I enjoyed the first quiet hour of the day in a way I hadn't in a very long time. Gerald's cooking improved, slowly. He watched videos on his phone and experimented in the kitchen on his side of it with what I privately considered mixed results, though the pasta he made on the third week was genuinely edible and I told him so. He also went to the grocery store several times. He came home from the second trip, looking slightly stunned. Groceries are expensive, he said. Yes, I said, they are. How much have you been spending a month? I turned my laptop around. The spreadsheet was still open. He leaned in and read for a long time without saying anything. This is just receipts? He asked. Every receipt I kept, so it's actually an undercount. He read for a while longer. I watched his face process the numbers in the way I had once watched new clients at work process their actual financial situation, that particular sequence of resistance, recalculation, and something finally landing. $68,000, he said quietly. That's just Sundays, I said. I haven't totaled the holiday gifts yet. He pushed the laptop back toward me and sat there for a while looking at the table. Why did you never say anything? Because I didn't think I had to, I said. Because I thought it was visible. Because I thought we were partners, and partners don't invoice each other. I took it for granted, he said. You took me for granted, I said. There's a difference. Patrice called me that week and the week after. She had started talking to her own husband about what she contributed to their household and what he had been casually not noticing. You opened something up, she said. I didn't expect to spend my week rethinking my entire marriage, but here we are. I heard her laugh a little, and I laughed too. And it was the kind of laugh that has some grief in it alongside the genuine amusement. Gerald called his brothers and told them Sunday dinners were on hold indefinitely. His older brother apparently said it was about time we had a break. His younger brother apparently said he and Patrice would host the next one. These were both things that could have happened 11 years ago and never did because no one, including me, thought to change the arrangement. A month into the new system, Gerald asked if we could talk about how things were going. We sat down at the kitchen table again. He had made coffee, real coffee, in the French press I had always used, which he had apparently watched me use enough times to figure out, and he set a cup in front of me before I had asked for one. I noticed that. I didn't say anything, but I noticed it. I want to understand something, he said. Was it just the money, or was it something bigger? I thought about how to answer that honestly. The money was the evidence, I said. What was bigger was that you didn't see me. You looked at our life and you saw what you contributed, but you didn't see what I contributed. You saw the house, but not the work that kept it running. You saw Sunday dinner appear, but not the Saturday shopping and the Sunday morning in the kitchen. I was invisible inside my own home. Gerald was quiet for a long time. And the thing is, I continued, when you feel invisible, you stop asking to be seen. You just keep doing the work and telling yourself it's fine and that fine is good enough. And then one day your husband tells you that you contribute nothing and you realize that fine was never good enough. It was just quiet. I don't want you to feel invisible, he said. I don't want that to be what we are. Then you have to actually look, I said. Not apologize and go back to the way things were. Actually look. He asked me to show him the household maintenance schedule. I almost didn't recognize the question because no one had ever asked to see it. I had kept it in my head for 34 years like a piece of software running quietly in the background. I wrote it out on a piece of paper. Laundry on Mondays and Thursdays. Bathrooms on Wednesdays. Deep cleaning every other Saturday, grocery planning every Friday, bill payments first of the month, doctor's appointments and prescription refills. I had managed both of ours since Gerald consistently forgot his own. He read the list. He said, I knew about the laundry. He paused. I don't think I knew about the rest. I know, I said. I want to take half of this, he said, not as a gesture, as something permanent. I looked at my husband across the kitchen table. 64 years old, looking a little worn and a little humble, and a great deal more like the man I had originally married than he had looked in quite some time. I thought about what I wanted, not what was fair and not what was expected, but what I actually wanted from whatever years we had left. Then let's try it, I said. For real, not for a month, for good. Things changed. Slowly, the way real changes happen, not in a moment of grand resolution, but in a series of small, consistent choices. Gerald took over laundry. He ruined 2 of my blouses in the first month, hot water where there should have been cold, but he apologized genuinely and looked up what he'd done wrong and didn't repeat it. He started handling his own prescriptions and his own doctor's appointments. He took over grocery shopping 2 weeks out of 4 and came home with a reasonable approximation of what we actually needed. The Sundays changed too. We started hosting again, but differently. We told everyone well in advance. We asked people to bring things, and Gerald stood in the kitchen alongside me. He learned to make a decent pot of soup. He made cornbread from a box mix one Sunday, and his older brother ate 3 pieces, and Gerald looked deeply pleased with himself, which I found genuinely endearing. Patrice and I started having coffee together once a week, sometimes at her house, sometimes at mine. We talked about everything. Our marriages, our children, what it felt like to have spent decades making our households run while everyone else used them. She was funny and sharp, and I found myself laughing in a way I hadn't in years. I went back to water aerobics and kept going. I joined a Tuesday evening book club at the library, something I had mentioned wanting to do years ago and never quite found the time for. I finished 4 books in the first 2 months. I bought a very good quality blender and made myself smoothies in the mornings because I'd wanted to do that for ages, and there had always been some reason it seemed like too much trouble. 6 months after that Tuesday evening in October, I opened my spreadsheet again. Not to calculate grievances this time, but because I genuinely wanted to look at what our household finances look like, now that they were shared honestly and visibly and without my carrying the weight of them alone. We were spending less, not because I was depriving us of anything, but because Gerald, now that he was participating in the shopping, had become aware of what things actually cost and was thoughtful about it in a way he simply hadn't been when the purchases were invisible to him. He had stopped asking me to stop at the expensive grocery store on the way home without mentioning it first. He had started making a list. My personal account had grown by more than I expected. Not because I had been withholding anything, but because I was no longer quietly absorbing costs that should have been shared. Gerald's occasional pharmacy runs I'd handled. His work event gifts I'd bought and he'd taken. The extras that had always somehow found their way into my cart and off my card. I'm not going to tell you our marriage became perfect. 34 years of established patterns do not dissolve in 6 months. Gerald forgets things. He still occasionally speaks before he thinks. Last month, he said something dismissive about my book club that I addressed directly and immediately rather than carrying quietly, and he apologized and meant it, and that was that. The difference is I no longer carry it. I put it down the same day now. That alone has changed the texture of our life together. I am going to tell you what I learned. For 34 years, I believed that doing everything without complaint was a form of love. Maybe it was, in part, but it was also a slow erasure of myself. My time, my preferences, my voice in service of a comfort that was so constant and so frictionless that the man I was providing it to eventually forgot it existed. When you make yourself invisible, people will sometimes believe you are. The moment I stopped absorbing the cost of our household alone, they became visible, not because I made a scene, because I stopped hiding them. All I did was say, plainly, this is what it actually costs. This is what I have actually been doing. Look, some things cannot be recovered once they are said. Gerald can never unsay what he said to me in October, and I would be lying if I told you the sentence doesn't still surface, sometimes unexpectedly, in the middle of an ordinary day. But what you can do is decide whether the person who said the thing is the same person standing in front of you now, or a different one. That is a question only you can answer for yourself. I answered it one way. You might answer it another way. Both answers can be right depending on what you have in front of you. I have a husband who now does the laundry on Mondays and Thursdays without being asked, who makes soup from scratch on Sunday afternoons, who looked at his spreadsheet and sat quietly with what he saw in it and said I was wrong and meant it. That is the person standing in front of me now. I have a Thursday coffee with Patrice. I have a book club. I have a blender. I have a personal account that is mine and a household that is genuinely shared. I'm 62 years old and I feel, for the first time in a very long time, like a full person inside my own life. I wrote a few things down last month on an index card and taped it to the inside of the kitchen cabinet where I keep my coffee. Not as a reminder for him, as a reminder for me. Never stop doing things because they're expected. Do them because you choose to. Stop making yourself invisible to keep the peace. The peace you keep that way isn't peace, it's just silence. Know what you contribute. Write it down if you have to. Know the number. If someone makes you feel small, do not quietly grow smaller. Grow exactly as large as the truth. You are allowed to take up space in your own life. That is not a small luxury. That is the whole point. I still have my shoebox of receipts. I keep it less obsessively now. I don't need it the way I once did. But I keep it because that habit taught me something I am glad I know. That numbers don't lie. That value is not invisible unless you allow it to be, and that a woman who understands what things cost is never as powerless as anyone would like her to believe. Thank you for being here with me today. If this story stayed with you, I'd love it if you'd subscribe and leave a like before you go. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there? I love knowing where all of you wonderful people are. I'll be back tomorrow with a new story. 2 of my most watched videos are coming up on screen right now. Go ahead and choose your next one.